Owen went to his safe and pulled out a few of his old army rifles. He needed to be prepared if those Biosyn jerks came back. Now that he was with Barry and the kids, he was just as much a suspect as they were. Gray held out his hand out for Jan to take. She was laid out in Owen's chair after her medicine had taken effect. She felt a bit woozy, like she was walking on air. All the venom for the Dilophosaur was gone from her veins, however, and she was saved from death. I can walk, she said, staggering to her feet. Yeah, I don't think so, Gray said as he put his arm around her, helping her along. Zach was getting together supplies for their little getaway. He, of course, had all his electronics. Of course that was all that mattered. We don't have much time, Barry said, walking alongside Owen. Biosyn could be following us here right now. Got it, Owen said as he gathered some bullets just in case. Gray, Zach, better get your friend in my Jeep. Sure thing, Owen, Zach said as he helped Gray carry Jan outside. They saw Owen's Jeep outside waiting for them and started to head over to it. And they most certainly would have gotten to it. No doubt, if it hadn't suddenly blown up. Owen was knocked onto his feet by the explosion. His Jeep was now a burning pile of metal and smoke rising into the night sky. Through the smoke, someone appeared. An African-American man wearing the same kind of uniform that the Biosyn men were wearing. He also held in his arms a large bazooka, which Owen could only guess was what sent his vehicle into flames. Behind the man came the headlights of the vehicles that they had seen riding through the woods. By now there was about a dozen Biosyn men surrounding them, pointing their guns at them. Run! Owen yelled as he scrambled to his feet. Run! Barry led the children back to his motorcycle, but found that it too was surrounded by the mercenaries. They turned around and saw the man with the bazooka close behind them. Surround them, he commanded to his men. Make sure they don't get away. Hey man, who's paying you for this? Owen asked, standing between them and his company. Classified, the bazooka man replied. But these three teenagers here are strictly our business. Unless you want to get a face full of lead, I suggest you stand aside. No can do, Owen said, raising his own gun. You want him? That go through me. As if it were something invisible doing it, there was a loud bang, and Owen's gun was sent flying out of his hand. It had broken into several pieces. One of the grunts had shot the gun out of his hands. It surprised Owen how accurate their shot was. His eyes widened. He turned back to the bazooka man. This is awkward. But he was not out of the game yet. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and round. It was a smoke bomb. He threw it on the ground and watched as the smoke inside it was released. Loud yelling could be heard as the mercenaries tried to find the suspects. Shoot! Shoot! The bazooka man yelled. The men began to shoot in all directions inside the giant smoke cloud, yelling as they did. What they didn't see was that Owen had led Barry and the children away from them and back towards his cabin. He quickly made sure they were all inside before locking the door behind him. So, he said urgently, get to the cellar. All right! He led his party down the stairs and into the darkness of his cellar. He had a rug on top of it so no one would find it. As soon as everyone was in, he quickly shut and locked the door as it connected with the floor. And at that moment, he heard a window shatter. He heard the front door fall to the ground above them. This made him realize those grunts were breaking into his cabin. He could hear their footsteps and clamoring. He heard the bazooka man giving orders to the troops. Now, they were right on top of him. And suddenly they heard the bazooka man silence his men. What happened next was just what Owen was afraid of. He heard the rug be taken off of the door. He could hear him smashing something hard against the wooden door. He knew where they were. He was breaking in. Chunks of wood broke off as he could see through it. He saw the army boots of the bazooka man clearly. Now it was only a matter of time before he broke in. Before they were dead. And without warning, the smashing had stopped. And you could hear one of the soldiers yelling. And along with that yelling, there was a different kind of sound. It was a kind of growling and gnashing. And when the soldiers' painful yelling ceased, the rest began to chatter loudly as more scrambling around could be heard from above. The bazooka man had long since walked away from the cellar door. Now it was unclear as to what creature was among the soldiers above them to the teens. But to Owen and Barry, there could be one answer. Blue? Standing upright and bearing her fangs, Blue ready for some attack the men who tried to kill her in despair. She looked forward and sank her fangs into the nearest of these green groups. She had dealt with humans like these before. Men who tried to kill other men was disgusting to her. How selfish these people were in this strange world disturbed her greatly. She just hoped there wasn't a hybrid involved this time. When she was sure that this cruel man was dead, she found herself being shot at by some of the soldiers. She swiftly dodged. Humans called windows and looked around. She panted heavily as she scanned the area. More of the green suits were stationing themselves around the cabin, each putting something in the ground around it. And in the woods, she saw it. She must have been having a vision, a sort of odd, mistaken glance. Her cold blood was much colder now, as if she had just run through snow. For a moment, she had thought she was seeing a ghost. A raptor. For so long, she had thought that she was the last of her kind. So seeing a living, breathing raptor at the edge of the tree line was not something she had expected. It stood about the same size as she did, but had a different skin pattern to it. Its scales were purple with a long white line going across the sides. Its underbelly was pure white. Her attention turned toward the head, where she could make out his blood-red eyes. Finally, atop his head ran a line of sharp-looking quills. It was indeed a male. Blue locked eyes with him for a second. The male raptor stared back at her and tilted his head in confusion, much like she did. Before he could move toward her, however, he let out a pained shriek and rubbed the side of his head slightly. When she turned his head, Blue knew what was troubling him. Some sort of mechanical device, like nothing she had seen before, was stuck at the side of his head. It made a sort of electric shocking sound as she tried to scratch at it. A red light flickered rapidly as he grunted in severe pain. He then raised his head and let out a loud barking sound. He was calling for help. Although it was a highly remembered sound for raptors, this one sounded very different. It sounded automated, as if it were made by a robot. Blue was hoping that he was calling for other raptors. She was very eager to know that there were more with him. After being alone for so long, seeing more raptors would be a welcomed change. But oh how wrong she was. She heard a loud crashing of trees in the woods, and before long a bigger shape was making itself known from behind the male raptor. It was a bigger dinosaur, but she could not make out what it was. Blue let out a loud bark to try and warn him, but he did not move. He just looked up at the bigger dinosaur and walked away with it, as if it were quite reluctant to do so. As the two dinosaurs departed, they were soon joined by an Allosaurus and another dinosaur that she had never seen before. Before she could go after them, a loud sound shook the earth behind her. Her eyes were blinded by a bright, fiery light. She turned around and saw that the cabin had exploded in a burst of fire. Now she realized what it was those men were saying around it. Explosives. She called out to it, hoping that Owen would answer her. Nothing came. She let out a squeal before rushing to the back of the now destroyed cabin. She sniffed the ground to see if she could at least find something, and she did. There was something underground that had caught her attention. Raptors had a keen sense of smell, keener than that of any bloodhound. It was something made of stone. It seemed to go on for a long ways, and then she could smell it. Owen and the others, they were okay. And now she was piecing it all together. The stone thing she had smelled was a passageway that was apparently in the cellar. She was pleased that they were all right. But now she had to get out of there. And she also had to get to the bottom of who that mysterious raptor was. George Baselton set his large bazooka next to his car before turning on his walkie-talkie. He had seen the cabin blown to bits just a minute ago, and now he was certain that their targets were now dead. Baselton to Dodgson, he reported. Mission completed. Heading back to the recon point. Over. He and his remaining squadron began to load up and started to head out, unaware that their targets were just below their feet. And who knows where they would end up now.